So the next group of commands we're going to talk about are our modify commands. So you've got to know how to draw these things on there, and once you have them on there, now we're going to learn how we can go in and modify those different things. So that's what we're going to start with now. The way that these commands work is, you have to have something there in order to modify it. You can select single objects, you can select multiple objects, and you can do this using a window on your screen or just clicking multiple things. You can select them first and then modify them, or you can choose the modify command first and then go and select the objects that you want that particular command applied to. So it kind of works either way, that's fine. So the first command we'll talk about is the move command. So I am going to come in here, here's my AutoCAD, I'm going to draw a circle whose center point is at 5, 5 and whose radius is 5. So just to give you an idea, there's a circle whose center is at 5, 5 and radius 5. Now, so I can't see the entire circle, so I'm going to do a quick Z for zoom and an A for all to kind of center that in for me a little bit, okay? All right, so we're going to take this circle and we're going to move it. So if I look at my home tab, my modify toolbar panel, I have up here move, okay? And it kind of shows you an example there of how to move that. What I'm going to do, instead of using the button, I'm going to type M for move, which is the same thing. It asks me what I want to move, so I'm going to use my mouse and select the circle there. To get to the next step, I'm going to push enter. Then it asks me to pick a base point. Where do I want to pick this circle up at? Well, I'm just going to click with my mouse, just anywhere on the screen. Click. So that's where I picked it up at. So now you'll notice as I move my mouse, it's kind of based upon where I picked it up at. If I want to move this to the right 1 unit, how would I do that? Well, I can use my relative coordinates from earlier. So I can type at for relative 1, 0, and that's going to move me to the right 1 unit. Enter. So now it moved it to the right. So really easy way to use your move command. The next one over is copy, your copy command. So this time I'm going to do it a little bit backwards. I'm going to select the object first, then click on copy. It asks me to pick a base point again. Where do I want to copy this? Well, I'm going to pick just anywhere, really doesn't matter where. And I want to specify a second point. Where do I want to copy this to? I'm going to copy it to the left 1 unit. So I'm going to go at -1, 0, and now you'll notice I have 2 circles there. Same size, just copied one over. So different ways that you can use your copy command on your keyboard. Rotate allows you to rotate things. I'll let you play with that one on your own. Obviously rotating a circle you're not going to see very much, so just play around with the command. All you have to do is read your command line. Same thing with stretch, I'll let you play around with that one. Here's kind of a little example of how you can use that stretch command. Scale, I'm going to go ahead and show you this one. So here's my scale command. I'm going to select it. I'm going to select both of these circles right now. Okay. Select objects. To get to the next screen, I'm going to push enter. It asks me to pick a base point. I'm just going to click over here with my mouse. And now it's asking for a scale factor. And as I move my mouse, you're going to see I can shrink these things. I can make them larger. If I wanted to shrink them and make them half the size that they are now, I can type in a scale factor of 0.5 or 50% and then enter. So what it did was it just shrunk those down by 50%. Without, instead of being diameter 5 circles, they're now diameter 2.5 circles. So that's the scale command. And here's another example of how that might work based upon which base point you chose when you did the scale command. Here's another one that's really fun, is offset. Okay, so offset command is right there, offset. And the way that offset works, if we started with the original square on the left and we did an offset and you set your offset distance and then we clicked inside that square, it's going to move it in and offset at that particular distance. So this distance between here and there is your offset distance. And you can continue doing this over and over and over again. So I'm going to go back to my example. I'm going to click on one of these circles and then push the delete key. So now I just have one circle, and I'm going to choose the offset command. I'm going to read in my command line, it says specify offset distance, and you'll notice that mine happens to be set at 1 because that's the number inside of the arrows there. I'm going to change mine to 0.5 and then enter. Now it says select object to offset. Well, I want to offset this circle, so I'm going to select the circle. Now I can make it bigger by moving my mouse outside the circle, or I can offset it and make it smaller by moving my mouse inside. It's up to you, and whatever it is you're trying to draw. So if I were to move my mouse to the inside and click, you'll see that now I have 2 circles, and the distance between here and there is 0.5. I can do this, continue to do it again, just by clicking and click, 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 and you get the idea. So that's going smaller. If I want to go larger, I can click and go move my mouse to the outside and click again. And again, this distance between each one of these points that's your offset distance. And you can do this with circles, rectangles, lines, whatever shape you happen to have. Now, mirror is a pretty neat thing. It lets you mirror something around. So if I were to, maybe I wanted to take all of these objects right there and mirror them. I've selected them, push the mirror command, and then it asks you for this magic thing called a mirror line. If I were to draw an imaginary line from here down to here, you'll see that it gives me a little preview there of what those objects are going to look like, and it asks me, do I want to erase my source objects? Well, those are the objects that I originally had. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to type in N for no, and then enter. So now you'll see on the left was my original object, and then I drew a mirror line in there, and it mirrored those objects over. So here's an example of my original object there on the left, and what it would look like if I had a vertical mirror line, or what it might look like if I had a mirror line at an angle that went through a point. You get the idea. Then we already learned this just a second ago, the erase command and how that works. So here's my pencil eraser. If I wanted to erase this, that, and that, I could select those objects, click the erase button. Now they're gone. Or I could select them and push the delete key. Either way, the delete key and the erase button, they both do the exact same thing. The next command I want to talk about is the trim command, and this one can be a little confusing because it's a little bit different. So I'm going to go and kind of erase my screen a little bit, and I'm going to draw a circle, and then I'm going to draw a line that goes and passes through that circle, kind of like that. So what I want to do with this trim command is maybe I want to get rid of the part of the line that's inside the circle. So this is how I would do that. I would come up and choose trim. It asks me to select objects. Well, I not only want to shorten this line right here, but I need to know how far back, what intersection point am I going to trim that line to? I'm going to trim it to that circle. Now here's the really important part. When you do trim, it's a little bit different. Typically what we've done in the past is enter to get to the next step. But in this example, it's not the case. Now what I want you to do is right click to get to the next step. I want you to right click. So if you right click, it's going to change your command line down there. And now what I want you to do is left click on the parts that you want to get rid of. So if I want to get rid of the part inside the circle, then I would left click on that, and you'll notice it's gone now. So trim is a little bit different. To get to that next step, instead of enter, I want you to right click. So I'll show you another example of how that will work. If I drew a circle, and this time I'm going to go and draw a line that passes all the way through the circle. I'm going to start my trim command. I'm going to select the object that I want to trim, as well as the fence or the intersection points of where I want that shortening to go. How far do you want it to go to where? And I selected that. Then I'm going to right click and then left click on the parts that I want to get rid of. So if I wanted to get rid of this part in the middle, I would click right there, and now that part is gone. So there's an example of how to use trim, okay? Kind of the opposite of trim is extend. So you can play around with that one. So maybe if we had a scenario like this where we wanted to extend that line on out to where it met with that arc, we could use the extend button. I'll let you play with that one. It's pretty simple. Chamfer and fillet are two more commands. So what I want to do now is come in and I'm going to draw two lines that don't really intersect at all. Just two lines, something like this. Okay, and I'm going to go and use the chamfer command. Now it's kind of hidden up here. Fillet is that command, and here's chamfer right there. So you have to use the drop down box to find chamfer. And there's an example of what we do with the chamfered edge. It's kind of not nice and square. It's got a little rounded edge to it. Okay, so I'm going to choose chamfer. The first thing that you'll notice down in your command line is you've got some things that are preset in there. It says current chamfer distance 1 and distance 2, and those are both set to 0. So if I wanted to change those distances, I could type in D, enter for distance, and I'm going to put in a distance of 0.25, enter, and 0.25, enter. So both of those distances are now set to 1/4 of an inch. And now if I click on the first line and click on the second line, it is going to put this little notch over here in the corner. So it extended them, and then the distance left and down is 0.25 over and down, and put that notch in there. So I'm going to undo that command and show you the next command, which is the fillet command, and how we work with that one. So here's fillet. Notice again in my command line I have a radius equal to 0. So if I want to change that radius, I would type in R, enter. I'm going to change my radius to 1, and now I'm going to pick the first line, pick the second line, and you'll notice that I put in a nice little curve right there. So I don't have a sharp corner anymore, I have a nice rounded corner. So that's chamfer and then fillet. The array command we'll talk about later on. It walks you through how to do a pattern, and I'll post another video out there for how to use the array command.